India bows to the brave martyrs who lost their lives in Ladakh. Their valor will always be remembered. This is what the Prime Minister said while addressing the nation through Man Ki Baat. The Prime Minister said that India has given a befitting reply to those who try to enter India's territory. And that world has seen India's commitment to protect its borders and its sovereignty. Uh, Launching a double barrel attack on the Congress as well, Home Minister Amit Shah targeted Rahul Gandhi for his recent comments on the LAC standoff. Shah made a scathing attack on Rahul Gandhi, accusing him of indulging in shallow politics. Rahul had accused Prime Minister Narendra Modi of surrendering India's territory to China using the words surrender Modi for him on Twitter. Strategically, the Indian Army has deployed Akash air defense systems at the line of actual control in Ladakh. Even though the communication channels have been kept open with China, India is not taking any chances and beefing up its security presence on the front line. India has already pressed Sukhoi fighter jets and bomber planes to aid the maneuvers of the Indian Army on ground, which is busy staving off misadventures of the Chinese army. Also, India is in talks with Israel for the purchase of the Barak 8 missile defense system in order to respond to all Chinese actions. A deal was signed between the two countries to buy the Navy version of this missile in the year 2018. Well, so a lot is going on and a lot has to be talked about, a lot has to be ascertained. We as a nation have to approach the China nuisance, if I can call it, with a lot of caution. We have to approach it with a lot of circumspect valor, if I may use those words in conjunction. And we'll talk about this with our esteemed panelists on the show. Joining me on this particular topic is Professor Madhav Nalapat, Editorial Director of the Sunday Guardian. Also with us on the panel is Sumit Peer, Political Analyst. We will be joined by Ambassador Ashok Sajjanha, who is a former diplomat, and Major General Dhruv Katoch, Director of India Foundation, Defense and Strategic Expert, will also be joining us. Professor Nalapat, let me come to you first. Obviously, there are two aspects to the monologue I just read out to viewers. Firstly, the politicization that is going along in juxtaposition to India's response to China. How is it even justifiable at this point in time for any party or any party member to pick faults in the way the government is dealing with China? Your first response to that?
Well, I'd like to say that when you talk about the opposition, obviously it means opposition to the ruling party. So it's not surprising that the Congress party is adopting this role. The Congress party has long wanted to be seen as the alternative to the BJP. In fact, this was very advantageous to the BJP in the 2019 election. It essentially became a kind of referendum between Narendra Modi and Rahul Gandhi, and we all know, which leader was preferred by the people. So I think this is quite normal and natural where politics and politicians are concerned. Although I do agree, of course, that where the country is concerned, I think there has to be unity in the face of a common threat. And I think the line should not be crossed where politics, in a sense, goes not against a party, but almost against the national interest.
Right. And joining me on the panel is also Ambassador Ashok Sajjanha, former diplomat, and Major General Dhruv Katoch also joins us. He's a defense and strategic expert. Ambassador Sajjanha, pleasure having you on the show, sir.
Thank you. Likewise.
We haven't spoken about this in a long time. In fact, we haven't spoken about anything in a long time.
Indeed.
First up, sir, I want to ascertain your reaction to the standoff between India and China. Obviously, a lot of water has flown under the bridge, but the fact of the matter is, and the echoing sentiment, not only within India, but outside of it, is that this is not the year 1962. It's 2020, the same year where China was held responsible for putting the world under a nuisance called COVID-19, and now they're indulging in misadventures which could potentially lead to a higher conflict, perhaps higher than the ones we saw after World War II.
No, absolutely. You're very right, Vineet. This is something that definitely not 1962. India definitely is today is not the India of 1962. But I think if you look at China also and try to find out what are the motivations for them doing what they are doing, I think one can come to a number of conclusions to begin with. One, what is obvious that Xi Jinping, he is finding himself under considerable pressure domestically, principally on the economic front, because economic growth has been seen as the real legitimacy as far as the Chinese Communist Party regime is concerned. So he wants to, and this is under stress because there are about 70 to 80 million people who are unemployed. The export markets are closed. So China is under severe economic stress. And I think he wants to show to his people that this is the Communist Party is a bold, decisive government. So he's intruding, all these confrontations are taking place not only against India on the Ladakh border, but also in South China Sea, against Japan, against Taiwan, with Vietnam, with Malaysia, with Philippines, with Indonesia, with all of them. So I think that is one particular reason that one could surmise. The other possibly is that Xi Jinping at the moment feels that he is very strong, China is very strong, the whole world is really dealing with the COVID-19 crisis. The economic condition in the whole world is in decline. The countries are not really doing well and they need a lot of time. And it's particularly its major adversary, that is America, is not doing well. It has been quite ineffective and incompetent in dealing with the virus. So this is a good opportunity to go around and do what it wants in terms of taking over territory or establishing its control in the South China Sea. And lastly, possibly it could also be that it wants to, as in 1962, maybe the PLA thinks that it can teach India a lesson, so that this is a message that should go not only to India, but to the world, particularly to the neighborhood, that India is nowhere as far as China is concerned in comparison with China. But I think that in this particular case, China, the PLA, the CCP, and Mr. Xi Jinping have chewed more than they can, have bit more than they can chew. They have, I think they have underestimated what India and what the other countries can do. I think on the 15th, we have given them a bloody nose. We have seen what the Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has said about moving into Asia, again, reviving the pivot to Asia. We have seen the 3 big aircraft carriers coming into Asia. We've seen what the NSA of the United States has said about confronting China. So I think there is a huge, and lastly, we have also seen our own External Affairs Minister, Dr. Jaishankar, coming out openly and clearly that the world needs to find out as to what is the cause, what is the reason for the coronavirus, where did it originate, how did it originate. So we really need to go into it. I think this is the first time that India has come out in the open so very clearly. So I think the gloves are now off. In the Mann Ki Baat today, the Prime Minister was very categorical that as far as our sovereignty is concerned, as far as our territorial integrity is concerned, there will be no compromises. So I think India has a number of possibilities, a number of options. Going forward, we will see all of them being used if China does not mend its ways and restore the status quo ante as India has been asking it to do.
Right, General Katoch, we have a number of options. We have a number of opportunities as well. But the fact of the matter is that the world at this point in time, sir, is united against China. And the Prime Minister and the Home Minister Without getting into excessive politics about the situation that persists and exists at the LAC, have made it categorically clear that our stand against China is firm. The hubris and the aggression and the bullish nature which has been displayed by China over the years is not going to stand. India is a different animal altogether now.
Oh, yes, Vineet, I think you're absolutely correct on this. One thing which I really appreciate is the response by the Indian ruling political establishment. I think it is very important to give the correct political messages. And the second point, I think, which is very heartening as far as India is concerned, is the way the entire civil society has got together. You mentioned in the beginning about some of the political parties really not being on board. I think we can handle that. That is sad, but I think we can handle it so long as the people of India and and some of the ruling establishment is firm. We can handle it. You see, one of the reasons why I think China has gone in for this, it is simply not India. You know, they have actually put the hands very deep into the Indian Ocean region and in the South China Sea. Now, one of the reasons I think they are doing this is because they feel they can get away. This is their power play. It is Xi Jinping's power play. He has made his move. I am going to do this in the South China Sea. Do what you can. And from his side, I think what he expects is a muted response from the rest of the world, especially because what Ambassador Sajjanad earlier said, that he feels that the world is not strong enough at this point of time. They are all combating the virus. Now, how that plays out, we will see. I think at the other end of the spectrum on the land, we are watching what is happening in eastern Ladakh. Now, eastern Ladakh is the one which concerns us immediately, though I think after some time, even what happens on the Indian Ocean region will be a matter of serious concern to us. But as far as eastern Ladakh is concerned, I think along with the political will, the military will is strong. The troops are well motivated, so I've got no doubts of that. The only thing is, you see, the warfare which we are expecting perhaps is going to be quite different. We are not really looking at physical combat between troops to troops. You know, what happened in 62, masses of Chinese hordes of troops trying to attack. I think this is what China has planned, a difference in their strategy. This is going to be a high-tech war. And in their high-tech war, what they presume to put on the battlefield is assets to control the electromagnetic spectrum, what we call the spectrum warfare, and to achieve dominance in what we call network-centric warfare. Now, both of these combined together require huge space assets and ground assets, and the control of all other systems like missiles and guns depends upon this. I think China is banking on its strength there to actually muffle India. They think they can do it. Now, whether they can do it or not, time will tell. I have my very serious doubts. But after this phase is over, this muffling phase is over to see as to who gets the superiority, I think the final phase will come, and that is to get dominance over the air, over the Tibetan plateau. And I think that is going to be the decisive phase. Whoever can dominate, in my view, the Tibetan plateau, the air over the Tibetan plateau, will have dominance on the ground. So whether you have one division or two divisions or even three divisions, as the Chinese have got, if India achieves that air dominance, then you will find the battle taking on a completely different shape. In my personal view, I'm quite sanguine that we will hold what we have. The armed forces are confident. The political establishment is confident. You know, we're not hearing discordant voices as far as the ruling party is concerned. And I think that is the signal which has to come from the NDA, that we will do it. The response of the Prime Minister, I think, was perfect. And this is setting the stage for what can come in future.
Exactly. And Sumit Peer, extending upon the same point that General Ghatotch pointed out, that China is in fact riddled. It's not only riddled; it's perplexed with a kind of internal political ill will, and in fact the heat perhaps that Xi Jinping is facing because of his mishandling of the COVID-19 virus is not an incumbency, is not a problem that India perhaps has to deal with. Our political will, our political projection and vision is in unison.
See, Vinny, thank you very much for having me on the show. I have been one of the very few people from the very beginning, Vinny. I have been maintaining that Xi Jinping is in hot water. I'll repeat my words, because You see, the way Corona has gone out of the control, nobody is stupid to understand where it comes from. Yesterday, Americans are very clearly calling it Wuhan virus or the Chinese virus. They've stopped calling it coronavirus. That's what the NSA did. So with Corona getting out of the hand, with now all this China's plans getting out to the world, what do they want to do? With the revolts or those protests which are shipping in the country, unemployment, and there is a data out which say China has 317% of the debt of the total GDP. That is about 45 to 50 trillion dollars. Now look at the Indian figure. Our debt is less than $2 trillion. At $50 trillion of debt approximately, your banks or your financial institutions, which are state-run for last 20 years, I mean China, have not published their papers. So they are borrowing the money and giving out. Now, doing these expansion plans, putting debt traps in Africa and all is costing a lot of debt to the China. And now with your 30% of economy banking on exports and the country is ganging against you, will not allow Chinese goods to come in. For example, India was giving you good $50 billion of trade surplus a year. So these are the internal things which are, kind of baffling China, and there's a lot is not well within China, within the Communist Party of China, within the Politburo of China. Now, what China wanted us to believe, especially when I talk to India, which is very important to me, is that this is a war of perception. For last 60 years, we have been made to believe by various propagandas, various absurd doctrines, and various things that we cannot fight China. So if your enemy thinks he cannot fight you, 50% of battle is won there. And what they were doing in Ladakh and what they were doing around this LAC was a Diwali Mela. Every year they will come, put a few camps and then go back. Now this time around, when they came, they wanted to up the ante because they did it 4 to 5 places. But the current government of Modi ji has really given them a peace of mind. And our Prime Minister is very, very candid with it. He is not using diplomatic words. He is very candid. A piece of our inch is not negotiable. If you try to put a fight, set foot on our land, we will repel you with the equal amount of force. So what China wanted? China did not want an Asian century, sir. China wanted Asian century as 2 players, India and China. China wanted a Chinese century, and they see India as the biggest stumbling block for that. They wanted now, if you look at what the NSA has said, that he has clearly said that China wants, Xi Jinping wants to control the whole world. CCP has global ambitions, and he sees him as somebody who he believes he is the successor to Stalin, and Stalin has killed 20 million people. Now, these kind of absurd logics, and also India has put a spanner in the wheel on the thought process of Chinese Communist Party, that perception battle, China cannot be won. PLA is very modernized. You cannot handle PLA. You have to bow before China. That is put to toss. And what 15 Bihar told these Chinese PLA troops, we need to understand on Galwan, US intelligence clearly said it was a planned ambush. They thought that they will kill 20 of our people and none of the Chinese will die, and they will send a message. That is what the General Zhao thinks, who has seen war 42 years back. I think he must be 70 years old general. He has seen war 42 years back. He thought that he will teach a lesson to India. But what Bihar told him, 6 Bihar, even with the ambush kind of situation, that has rattled PLA. Why are not they declaring their dead? Why are they sending those ashes of their Jawans in a yellow box? Don't Chinese army Jawans deserve a funeral? Have they not fought for the Chinese? The answer is yes, because these CCP believes that the PLA is the force of CCP of India. They do not consider CCP as a sovereign army. CCP fights for Chinese Communist Party. It's like a mercenary force. It is not like a sovereign army which fights for the country. When it comes to Indian army, it doesn't matter who's in the power. Every Jawan, every officer, every person on the ground fights for Mother India. They don't care who's in the power. That is a big difference between CCP and us. Perception war is rattled. That is what is worrying Xi Jinping. And all Asian countries, sir, are looking up to us. Vietnam, China, Cambodia, Japan, everybody. They are all looking to us. Can India stand to China or not? And so far, we are doing a brilliant work. With every passing day, that cloud of China, invincible, kuch nahi kar sakte. You have to bow to the China. Oh, they're so big, you cannot just handle them. That is getting washed out, Vinny. That is getting drained out, I would say.
Absolutely. Professor Nalapat, there is globally, obviously, an ill will against China. How can India best channelize that to make sure that the kind of bullish hubris that China has been portraying at the LAC does not stand for very long?
Well, I think when it's important to call a spade a spade. I mean, Sumit has talked about the US National Security Advisor. Yes, he has given a very important speech on China. I encourage everybody to watch that speech. Secretary of State Pompeo of the US also given a very, very blunt speech on China. But as far as I'm concerned, I mean, I really have no doubt in my mind that the virus originated in Wuhan and that it was spread because people in Wuhan traveled across the world. I don't know what else there is to investigate about that. I mean, you have some kind of a resolution by the WHO that they are now going to launch some kind of an investigation. Well, personally, I mean, I've judged based on all the information that is there in the public domain. I don't see any need for an investigation to find out where the virus came from. Now, Sumit has been talking about the collapse of the Chinese economy and its debt. Yes, the reality is the Communist Party is basically the master of all of China. It owns, for example, all the land in China, and that is worth an awful lot, but that is worth only if the Chinese regime is stable and the leadership is stable. If the Chinese leadership is unstable, the Chinese regime becomes unstable, then the entire Chinese state becomes unstable and the financial situation also will go out of control. So that is the question that is being faced now with the all-out war between the United States and China. China would like to downsize the dollar, take away the petrodollar, and basically reduce America's footprint sharply in the world. It would like to emerge as number one. The US would like to basically ensure that the Chinese economy goes down and therefore the Chinese party goes down. So this is the war that is taking place. And frankly, I think it's high time India come out boldly about this particular war. And I think we should not have ifs and buts and question marks. We should say boldly whatever we believe the facts are, one way or the other. Now, I want to make one point, Vineet. We're talking about World War III or whatever. But I would like to say it's not going to be a war like World War II or World War I, which is different from World War II. But you can see the impact of COVID. The destruction COVID is causing to livelihoods, the destruction it's causing to lives is akin to the destruction of a world war. So already COVID has had the effect of a world war. And my point is very simple. I again repeat, let's not talk only of India, only of Ladakh or the line of control. Let's talk about all the entire periphery of the Indo-Pacific that is being threatened by what we are seeing is the new activism of China. And I hope we have a strategy to ensure that there is synergy and leverage there. And if that kind of a strategy is there, then definitely Sumit is perfectly right. We have nothing to be worried about. And of course, let me also remind Sumit, he was talking about 60 years. May I remind Sumit, 30 years ago, our economy was bigger than the Chinese economy. Sumit, today there may be 5 times, but 30 years ago, our economy was, if anything, bigger than the Chinese economy.
Right, sir. Correct. You're right. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Ambassador Sajjanhar, coming to you now, sir.
Yes.
There is no way to put this delicately, and I'm not even going to try and put this in a very sensitive manner, but because of COVID-19, China has been exposed. And that serves, whichever angle you look at it, from any perspective that you look at it, it serves the purpose that India has been trying to achieve for a very long time, calling out China for what it is.
No, you are very right. And I think the decision that has been taken at the World Health Assembly last month, that there will be a scientific investigation, because that is what China has always been demanding. I would tend to agree with what Mr. Nalipat has said, that, there is no investigation that is required, but still in terms of, there are a large number of theories that have been circulating, whether the virus moved out from the Wuhan Institute of Virology to the wet markets, and from there it got transferred to human beings. Is it an instrument of biological warfare? Was it being cultivated there in the laboratory? So I think all these aspects really need to be studied. And India today is in a very good position. It's in a very happy position, because India is the chair of the executive board of the World Health Assembly, and it's going to be the chair for the next 1 year. And so it has the possibility of playing a very important and a very decisive role as far as this investigation is concerned, and nailing down China as far as the whole issue of the origin of the Wuhan virus is concerned. Also, India is a member of, from 1st January onwards, we will be a member of the UN Security Council. So, I think all the Chinese shenanigans that we have been witnessing, last year in August, that it took the Kashmir issue. Since then, it has tried to take Kashmir issue to the UN Security Council 5 times, and all 5 times it has been defeated. But let us not think that China is not going to do anything about it. It will continue in its perfidious moves. It will continue to go there, but I think India's presence in the UN Security Council will be extremely helpful. Now, coming to Ladakh and to the border, and fine, they have also put their Sukhoi 30s and the tanks and all the armored personnel carriers and the heavy artillery equipment and all. And there is a mirror deployment as far as India is also concerned. My understanding, and my good friend General Dhruv Katoch could, speak on this. Also, my dear friend Madhav, you could have your own perspective. But my own view is that Xi Jinping, notwithstanding his arrogance, his hubris, everything, I don't think he is really looking for a war. Because I think the presence of all these troops is basically an element of coercion. When Australia started asking for an investigation, there was economic coercion against them. They said, we are going to cut down on our imports of beef, of wheat, of barley. We will not allow our students to come to you. We will not allow our tourists to come to you, etc. So you'll try to strangle them through the medium of the economy. Here it is military coercion that is being exercised on us, thinking that all these articles that are being put out, what Global Times comes out with, and mind you, Vinay, it's not only Global Times, it's not only Chinese commentators. You have very many of our Indian commentators, Indian so-called experts, Indian so-called analysts, Indian so-called, those who understand, those who've been to China. We have seen it, whether it's in Australia, whether it's in America, in the United Kingdom, how easily China is able to infiltrate and subvert the people there, whether it is politicians, whether it is think tank, whether it is decision makers, whether it is academia, whether it is business, whether it is policy makers, across the board. And this it is able to do in democracies, because democracies are considered to be soft targets. So I don't think India should be any exception in that. So we have been reading all this from even our Indian commentators, that India is no match for China. The same classical argument of Sun Tzu, that you win a war without fighting. That is what they are trying to do. The coercion, diplomatic coercion, military coercion at the border. They don't want to fight a war because they know that this is not a war that they can win. And if he cannot have a quick victory, it is equivalent to a defeat.
Absolutely. All right. General Katoch, let me come to you. In fact, we have a couple of minutes remaining on this program. So a minute for you to, for your closing comments, and then I'll go to Sumit, sir.
Yeah, I'll be very, very quick. I just want to give 3 very short points. 1, China is an expert at what they call psychological warfare, and this is part of the 3 warfares that they have enunciated about 2 decades ago. This is part of what they are seeing, and very rightly said by Ashok Sajjanar that they actually carry out, you can buy the media, you can buy people. They have been doing it. Number 2, I think they are making a push for world dominance. What they desire is a bipolar world in which they are the second world, the second pole, and they want a unipolar Asia. And number 3, I think what they are looking at an early Indian capitulation without the use of force. They have come up, unfortunately for them, against a political will which is strong and a nation which stands united. And I think these are 2, and of course, a very strong military presence to defend our interests. When you're looking at this, I think President Xi Jinping may require a rethink in the times to come.
All right. Sumit?
I think Vinny, the point I'm trying to make is that there have been these absurd Chinese logics, which possibly come from the opium guzzling philosophers, which have been on opium, high on opium, and thinking of those absurd, and they still think they are fighting Kublai Khan. What is this logic of hide your strength? What is this logic of attack the enemy in deceit? They tell them Galwan, they got the answer. What is this fight without, win the enemy without fighting a war? This was done by Chanakya. So Shinzu copied Chanakya because Chanakya was much before the Shinzu. Let me give you two facts. With AVAX, 32,000 feet in the sky, they can look 400 to 600 kilometers inside your space. So what is hide your strength? Whom are you going to hide strength from? Now with spy satellites we have, I don't know, maybe Americans are better. We have a resolution of 6 inches. That means if we want to look at a goddamn brick in China, we can look at that brick. Whom are you trying to, hide this strength from? Where are those doctrines where you have to scare us off with Shinzo doctrine, Ye doctrine, Wo doctrine in the time of technology? Do you think those absurd, doctrines, or do you think still you're fighting Kublai Khan? What we have shattered is those myths, those doctrines, which was pushed in the world as something which is out of this world. We have shattered them, Vinny. We have smothered them to pieces.
Absolutely. And Sumit, you rightly pointed out, and these doctrines usually become very redundant if the person that you're fighting against is already privy to them. They hold no meaning if the other side knows what exactly they're all about, because the other side can also have its own doctrines.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.